cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria rise to 65.
President Buhari issues new guidelines towards addressing the coronavirus pandemic.
Federal government to adopt aggressive measures to contain spread of COVID-19.
Some people up to now live in denial. They claim it will not be their portion.
And on Good Morning Nigeria this Friday, we continue our discussion on COVID-19 with focus on repositioning the economy.
The streets of Abuja are becoming eerily quiet as the Federal Capital Territory Administration takes measures to check the spread of COVID-19. National Assembly staff and indeed all public and civil servants are to work from home, while schools and other public places are to remain closed for 2 weeks. Kieran?
Well, Jume, Abuja is not alone in this. State executives have equally taken similar measures and even more drastic measures than the FCT, such as closing land, air and sea borders with neighboring states, closing of major markets and banning all forms of public gatherings, and the restriction of the number of persons at any event to 20. Indeed, there seems to be total lockdown in the country at the moment.
Yes, almost totally locked down because states are closing the border. You know, Kaduna State, you have to pass through the bypass. You can't pass through the town if you want to, if you're on transit, actually. And several preventive measures have been adopted, including imposition of curfew, social distancing, which is now a new word in the lexicon. In addition to the basic prevention of regular hand washing with soap and water, as well as the use of hand sanitizers.
The experience of China, where the virus emerged from, has shown that these measures also come with some economic trade-offs or opportunity costs. For instance, what started as minor preventive measures to check the spread of COVID-19 pandemic have graduated to series of shutdown of economic activities.
Now, within the past few weeks, there have been concerns about panic buying of food items, pharmaceuticals, groceries and other essential items, and the likely impact on the supply chain.
And according to Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, about 421 million learners have been affected worldwide as a result of closure of schools and tertiary institutions, while UNESCO report on schools closure due to COVID-19 indicates that 1 in 5 students is out of school globally.
And Kieran, if you recall, one of our guests on Good Morning Nigeria, Professor Uche Waleke, gave us an insight into the impact of COVID-19 on world stock market, which economic analysts say witnessed the largest single-week decline in February since 2008 financial crisis. Oil prices has also scrambled, and the impact of the shutdown on conferences, religious gatherings, sporting events, including the Tokyo Olympics and our own national sports festival tagged Edo 2020 is profound.
Yes, the impact of the coronavirus is indeed compelling policy decision makers to seek ways to respond to the profound shocks on world economy. Back home, the federal government is not relenting. Steps have been taken to buffer likely shocks on the economy and ameliorate the effect on Nigerians, some of them being review of the 2020 budget to reflect realities in global oil sector, reduction of pump price of fuel from 145 naira to 125, and several other measures.
So on Good Morning Nigeria today, we amplify the questions on the minds of millions of Nigerians at this period. How reassuring are these measures taken by government? What are the expectations from the fiscal authorities, the CBN and Ministry of Finance? What more can the government do? This will form the thrust of our conversation this Friday on Good Morning Nigeria. I am Jumma Yusuf, welcoming you to the program.
Indeed, Juma, it's going to be a tough one in the economic terrain at the moment. Many countries are taking drastic measures economically, to buffer the shock. And again, Any country who is not financially balanced may not actually be able to do that. But of course, looking inwards in the Nigerian situation now, I think the government has started an early action.
Like America now had a financial stimulus of $2 trillion.
And it's just in the history of that country. All right, I am Kyrian Umar, joining my colleague Jumai to also say welcome to the last edition of the program for the week. The program is reaching you live on the network service of the NTA, and we are broadcasting from our headquarters here in Abuja. This edition has its full complements, as always: newspaper review, business news, sports, and other segments. Let's now get started with the morning news with Musbao Danwahab. Hello, Musbao.
Hello, Kyrian. Here's the news. Nigeria's Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has confirmed 14 new cases of COVID-19, 12 in Lagos, and 1 in Bauchi and 1 in the FCT, bringing the number of confirmed cases to 65, with 61 active cases, 3 discharged, and 1 death. In the meantime, President Muhammad Buhari has issued new guidelines towards addressing the coronavirus pandemic. The guidelines are contained in a statement by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garuba Shehu, advised all Nigerians to follow the later the health guidelines issued by the Federal Ministry of Health and state governments. With regard to the request by the Government of Lagos State for financial support, Garuba Shehu says the President has already approved the sum of 10 billion naira to help in arresting the situation in the state. The President also approved and ensured the prompt release of 5 billion naira special intervention fund requested by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, to equip and expand their facilities and laboratories. Meanwhile, President Muhammad Buhari has commended all relevant agencies, private organizations, traditional and religious leaders on their efforts in fighting the spread of COVID-19 in Nigeria. And as we earlier informed you, latest report from the Nigeria Center Disease Control, NCDC, has confirmed 14 new cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria, bringing the total number to 65 in the country. And now, at a briefing in Abuja, the Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Ehanire, says the federal government is reviewing measures put in place to halt the spread of coronavirus in the country.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control has deployed rapid response teams to affected states to support response activities. I want to already strongly urge all health facilities at all levels, whether public or private, to be on high alert for healthcare and also for healthcare workers of all cadres to maintain a high index of suspicion and to give full cooperation to contact tracers everywhere. One major item in Nigeria's disease containment strategy is social distancing, which has been repeatedly announced. Directives have thus been issued at national and state levels to limit all large gatherings, including religious, social, and political gatherings, schools, events, and etc.
Meanwhile, the federal government has restated its determination to adopting an aggressive approach in enforcing measures aimed at containing the spread of COVID-19. Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed announced this at a media briefing in Abuja.
Many are busy engaging in meaningless criticisms instead of complying with stipulated directives to keep people safe. Some Nigerians who flee into the country from overseas filled wrong addresses and phone numbers in their forms, making it difficult to trace them when the need arises. Some Nigerians defied orders to stay away from large gatherings. while some religious leaders willfully flouted the directives to ensure social distancing. Some people up to now live in denial. They claim it will not be their portion.
Emir of Gwandu Alhaji Mohammed Ilyasu Bashiru and the Oni of Ife Obadeye Ogunwusi has urged Nigerians irrespective of religion or political affiliation to adhere or to all identified measures to curtail the spread of the disease. They emphasized that directives are for the benefit of all and sundry.
We must obey our leaders and abide by the rules put in place to curb the spread of this coronavirus.
Stop peddling rumors. We're having a lot of rumors flying. What is even critical beyond COVID-19 is fear. We should avoid fear and we shouldn't instill fear in one another. Please remember SAH. Stay at home.
Chinese company Mutual Commitments Group has acknowledged the role of the media in the fight against coronavirus the world over, saying media workers truly need protection. To this end, the Chinese company has donated face masks and other protective equipment to the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
We in the media have the responsibility to go in there, be at the forefront of the battle, get the true perspective and disseminate them to the public. And for us to be able to do that, we have to interact with medical personnel, we have to interact sometimes with even infected patients.
Supporting the NTA, their reporters are supporting this counter-virus war. Without their contribution now, the war cannot succeed on time. So that's why we feel that it's very necessary we do it immediately.
Now to the National Assembly, the Chairman Senate Committee on Information, Senator Danladi Sankara, has called on Nigerians to be wary of fake news on the coronavirus, especially on the social media. Senator Sankara, in a statement, observed that there are a number of unrealistic stories on the virus which seems to create panic instead of precaution. He pointed out the story making rounds a few days ago alleging that some members of the National Assembly tested positive to the virus as one of such fake news. Senator Sankara advised Nigerians to strictly adhere to the sanitary guidelines as released by health officials, especially maintaining social distancing and constant washing of hands. He explained that in spite of a 2 weeks recess, the Senate will be ready to attend to any matter of national importance. The House of Representatives has urged the Nigerian Correctional Services to take urgent steps to protect inmates at the various correctional centers nationwide from coronavirus, also known as COVID-19. The House Committee on Reformatory Institutions says it is imperative for the government to ensure that those in confinement are protected from the virus at this critical time. The committee called on Nigerian Correctional Services to put in place urgent measures to safeguard inmates and staff of the correctional service from contracting coronavirus, which is currently ravaging the world. And those are the news highlights for now. Join Good Morning Nigeria again after this break with Jumai and Kirian. Good morning.
Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down. Do you have a job where you're going to?
No, but someone is arranging,
Listen, Alinko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin. I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad or even end up in prison.
I'm Deputy Comptroller of Customs Joseph Atta, the spokesman for the joint security exercise. Over a period of time, either through indifference or deliberate non-compliance to the ECOWAS protocol on transit of goods by our neighbors, the Nigerian Customs Service have been raising this issue. MOUs were signed severally. They were broken as soon as they were signed. We've seized over 32,050 kg bags of rice. And that is a huge impact. And then the fact that the coming in of this foreign rice has been completely shut down. We've gone around, we've received testimonies of farmers who, before now, found it difficult to sell one truck on a market day. These people say it now that those who could not sell one can now sell up to 20 trucks.
Treat your family to a cereal that's made from the natural goodness of maize and soya protein and specially combined with Grain Smart, a smart combination of vitamins and iron, so that they have the right kind of energy to help them reach their full potential and turn the simple into amazing. Eat up and carry go, because nothing do you. Golden Morn, make every day amazing.
Nestle, good food, good life.
Heard of coronavirus? Coronavirus? Yes, COVID-19. You know, prevention is better than cure. Always have your hand sanitizer with you. Always remember to wash your hands regularly with soap and clean water. Yes. Whenever you want to sneeze or cough, you do it like this. Let's go. Fellow Nigerians, our culture encourages cleanliness.
This message is from NTA and NCAC.
This is Good Morning Nigeria, and we now go business. As COVID-19 rages, experts advocates use of data to stimulate the economy. Let's now join Kunle Adeye for details of that package.
The global economy is staggered due to the outbreak of COVID-19, and countries now struggle to stimulate their economies. Nigeria is taking different measures to cushion the effect of the outbreak, with different palliatives rolled out by the Central Bank of Nigeria. The federal government is also taking steps to review the 2020 budget benchmark from $57 to $30 per barrel because of the unstable global oil price. An agricultural economist, Professor Olu Makinde, has advocated the accurate use of data during this period.
It's the backbone of any information, because and that's what most of the African countries, let me say generally, because I've been in Ghana and other places, we lack most of that other thing. Very important in the fact that it keeps you running. It's a planning mechanism. So there's no way you can plan that you won't need data about rainfall, rain pattern, drought pattern, data of sequency of fruiting, data of agricultural commodity arrival time, data of gestation period, before you even talk about data of human beings. Data in terms of importance is prime.
And let's quickly see how tradings went on Thursday on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeye.
Thank you, Kunle, for the business package. Next is newspaper review.
And it's time now for us to do a review of some national dailies. Let's begin with the Daily Sun newspaper. Daily Sun newspaper, that's on the right-hand side of the nameplate. We have a military airstrike destroys ISWAP logistic base at training grounds in Borno State. The story is on pages 4 and 5. And now to the lead story. APC versus PDP, anxiety as Supreme Court rules on Zamfara judgment review motion. That's on page 3. But the lead story this morning on Daily Sun is a COVID-19 6 cured in Lagos, with 4 riders to that. Federal government in desperate search for 4,370 suspected cases. Lagos gets 10 billion naira, NCDC 5 billion naira. Government must ban on interstate, inter-town travels. NMA 6 total lockdown. Cases hit 65 as global figure moves to 500,000. And below the photo story here, we have a police on trial of abductors of Bauchi, on the trail rather, police on trail of abductors of Bauchi governor's brother. That's on page 4. And Adoekiti Bayelsa government's FCT information ministers test negative. All right, Enugu approves life assurance package for doctors, other health workers handling coronavirus. With a rider to that, Ebonyi Rivers shut down boundaries, Anambra places territory under watch. The story is on page 10. The Adoekiti Bayelsa governors and FCT information ministers testing of negative to coronavirus. The story is on page 8. Of the Daily Sun newspaper. Jimmy.
Yes, and I have the Blueprint newspaper just below the masthead. AFCC uncovers 35 illegal lottery operators. Find that story on page 7. Kogi Guba, court disqualifies PDP candidate over certificate forgery. That story is on page 20. Dana, Airpeace, Arik suspend flight operations. They've joined other airlines that have suspended operations starting from today, and that story is on page 29. The bold headlines in the Blueprint newspaper: as COVID-19 cases rises to 51, it's actually more than that now. Lockdown imminent, federal government declares. Says what riders, 4,370 cases gave wrong data. Buhari, Hale and Herthy to stop interstate travels. Obaseki, Akeredolu, Diri, lie, orders negative. Lawan, TUC seek relief for citizens. UBA donates 5 billion. United Nations offers 2 million support. We are ready for uninterrupted fuel supply. That's coming from Ipman. You find all that story on page 35 and 36 and page 5. The picture story there, one of the isolation centers at Onikon Stadium in Lagos yesterday. Environmental health officials fumigating Sheikh Abubakar Gumi Central Market to prevent the spread of coronavirus in Kaduna yesterday. Niger rules out further dialogue with bandits. France airlifts 260 citizens from Lagos. You find that story on page 35. At the bottom plate of the Blueprint newspaper, 27 Lassa fever cases confirmed in 9 Kogi local government areas. You find that story on page 5. 3 friends docked for beating man to death. The story is on page 13. Dankote Access Bank launch initiative against COVID-19. Find that story on page 29. Kieran?
Yeah. All right. Let's look at some of the stories on the headlines of today's dailies. The COVID-19 6 cured in Lagos. That's a healthy development in this regard. If that is clarified and it becomes true, then of course it's a good step being taken by our medical personnel, to ensure that Nigeria develops its own local approach to that. Well, we wouldn't know exactly the kind of medication being administered on the patients, actually, or rather the kind of medical therapy, because it's not necessarily a medication, so to speak, because there's no particular drug, that can solve the problem. They do a kind of combination, yes, do a combination of certain drugs that are close to dealing with such illness. Of course, the experience we had on Ebola, during Ebola period, of course, has given the medical personnel a kind of leverage, because at least they know how to begin to, approach it in the first instance. And if 6 have recovered, then it does mean that others may as well recover, because, of course, if there is any therapy that works for one person, it can also work for another, and so on. So that's a very good development, going forward on this pandemic. Because, you see, this pandemic, we have just 65, isn't it? Yeah. America is hitting the headline right now.
Yeah.
They have surpassed many other countries at the moment within the last 48 hours. And
Italy is still leading, I think.
What happened the last couple of hours in the U.S. is huge. It's quite huge. And there's a serious outcry in the U.S. presently.
And Trump is saying he's going to open up everybody for Easter.
No,
is that a possibility at all?
Well, what plays out will let him know whether it's possible or not. Because presently in America, New York, Louisiana, Georgia, California, Florida, these are places who have over 10,000. What is 10,000?
New York is worst hit, actually.
Exactly. So, and the deaths coming from New York, surpasses the death across America. So that shows you that if a city like New York can be hit this bad, with all the facilities available and all the intelligentsia in the medical sector, then it is a serious matter. And what the Minister of Information in Nigeria here has been saying is that people should try to adhere to the measures being put in place by government. Government at the federal level and government at the state level. We have to adhere to that because it is the only way out. Somebody said, look, that lockdown is the only way out. That gave China.
I told people this thing is not a myth. It is real.
It is.
It's staring us in the face. And in the face of it all, 27 Lassa fever cases confirmed in 9 Kogi local governments. That is quite alarming. Fighting COVID-19 and Lassa fever at the same time is a huge burden on government.
COVID-19 came and emerged, and people, seem to have forgotten their other ailments, other life-threatening ailments like Lassa fever. Lassa fever has consumed many souls in this country in recent past, and it should also be a focus of the medical personnel, although COVID-19 has become the order of the day. But there are other ailments. Malaria is still there as well, so let's not forget that other ailments are existing, like Lassa fever, in 9 government areas of Kogi State, even in the Ebonyi State, and some other states in the north are also having that experience of Lassa fever.
It's a scary situation, actually. Let's go to the editorial.
Now, the editorial this morning is actually from the national, which paper is this one? Okay. National economy, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he says, now is a good time for coronavirus bonds. Although the bond market is experiencing a lull, now is the perfect time to revamp it with the launch of coronavirus bonds like some other countries. Not only will the bonds help raise funds to fight the virus, it is an opportunity for investors to gain from the market. It will help to deepen the market. The idea of coronavirus bond is premised on the World Bank's pandemic bond launched in 2014. And the idea was to leverage private capital from Wall Street firms that would help poor countries. Well, if I understand this editorial, it is trying to see how we can also leverage on the coronavirus pandemic to see how we can now develop the economy of the nation. And when we raise such bond, that will assist developing countries in fighting this pandemic, which of course is a total war, as we can see it, because it's also economical as well. And when a war touches the economic well-being of a nation, then of course that there is not an easy one. So the editorial is saying that a coronavirus bond today will help shore up the war chest already being funded by the federal government, central bank, and Nigeria's billionaires, which is, by all metrics, although significant, is not enough to fight the pandemic in a country as big as Nigeria, with a population of over 200 million people and high density, especially in the southern part of the country. Well, the good news here is that many Nigerians are are beginning to make direct contributions, to the fight against coronavirus. And it's also good for many others, the billionaires of this nation to come out this time around to raise funds, in form of bond or what have you.
The Board company gave 1 billion naira yesterday.
Exactly.
And Aliko Dangote, Access Bank, they are coming out.
It is very important, and again, you see, it is very important to start now.
Yes.
Because what happened to other nations like Italy and America, is because it was played down at the initial time. But good thing is that the Nigerian government did not play this down from the first index case.
They hit the ground running.
They hit the ground running, at that time, and it's still doing that. And of course, certain measures have also been created or developed, to ensure that there's continuity in terms of sustaining, the fight, from that beginning to this moment that we have about 65 persons who have now been confirmed of carrying this virus. The more we fight it vigorously, obey the measures being put in place, of course, the better for all of us.
Yes, and as government is fighting, we as a people should continue and contribute our quota to it now. We'll take a break now. When we return, our conversation will begin.
Have love. We'll be able to unite, irrespective of tribe, religion, and culture. So we keep preaching on love. That is the only binding force. Let us love ourselves, irrespective of where the person comes from.
You are about to witness the commencement of the most stimulating and compelling contest on television. This contest is only for the strong, the intelligent, and the talented. Get ready for the Unity Challenge reality TV show. Coming soon.
We have 4 girls and 2 boys. Stephen is my younger brother. I was called on 8th of May that he had an accident. While he was on call, he came out to buy fruit that will sustain him to the next morning.
Touching lives.
Have you not heard of coronavirus? Coronavirus? Yes, COVID-19. Prevention is better than cure. Always have your hand sanitizer with you. Always remember to wash your hands regularly with soap and clean water. Yes. Whenever you want to sneeze or cough, you do it like this. Let's go. Fellow Nigerians, our culture encourages cleanliness.
This message is from NTA and NCAC.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Our conversation this morning borders on COVID-19 and repositioning the economy. And to set the tone for our discussion, let's get this backgrounder by Abdusalam Jibril.
Beyond the tragic health hazards and social consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, the resultant economic uncertainty occasioned by total or partial shutdown has come at a biting cost to the global economy. For instance, the United Nations Trade and Development Agency put the economic cost to the outbreak at about $2 trillion and still rising. With many countries and territories of the world still exploring and enforcing total and partial lockdown to contain the pandemic, the rising cost of COVID-19 for the global economy is coming closer home. Already, the price of crude oil, which is the mainstay of Nigeria's economy, traded far below the federal government's initial $57 benchmark for this year's budget. This forced President Muhammadu Buhari to direct a review of the 2020 budget to reflect current realities, necessitating a reduction of the oil benchmark to $30 per barrel, 50% cut in revenue from privatization proceeds, and 20% reduction in capital budgets. Even as it stands, the oil price currently hovers around $30 per barrel, with projections that it will dip further, going by the price war among international key players in the oil industry. With the COVID-19 pandemic still raging, tough economic decisions are inevitable, and government cannot do it all alone. President Buhari has already called for stakeholder mobilization that involves government, the private sector, and civil society to respond to the COVID-19 challenge presently confronting the nation. Now, what are the tough economic decisions to be made? What immediate and short-term measures can be adopted towards mitigating any adverse economic effect posed by COVID-19? These and more questions will engage guests on Good Morning Nigeria shortly.
All right, thank you indeed for that report. And to discuss COVID-19 repositioning the economy, I would like, first of all, to introduce Dr. Zainab Ahmed, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Development, who is joining us via Skype here from Abuja. Good morning, Honorable Minister, and welcome to the program.
Hello, good morning, Nigeria.
All right, and we also have with us here in the studio Uche Uwaleke, a professor of finance and capital market, former commissioner of finance, Imo State, and of course he's the professor of finance and capital market in Nasarawa State University. It's good to have you this morning on the program.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Good morning, Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigeria. And also joining us from our Benin Network Center is Professor Mike Obado, Professor of Economics and member Central Bank of Nigeria Monetary Policy Committee. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to have you again this morning on a very important topic that we have on our show this morning. Let's begin with the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Madam, there's a looming global economic meltdown, which so many countries are quite scared of at the moment. And a nation like Nigeria must be expecting some shocks in different departments of its economic life. Give us an idea of the shocks being expected by Nigeria and in what department of our economic planning.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. The COVID-19 crisis is a global crisis. What we're looking at is the possibility of a global recession if this crisis is not abated in a short period of time. And Nigeria will not be removed from that. We are facing significant risks in terms of our capacity to respond in the health sector, but also we are facing significant risk in terms of the steep decline to revenue. The measures we are taking will include one, a robust response to the health crisis itself. The President has approved and we have provided funding for the response locally, but we're also expecting some funds from multilateral institutions that will be infused to manage the crisis, to build up our health sector, re-equip the major hospitals, have labs that are adequate, and also equip isolation centers. On our part, on the domestic economy, we have taken a number of measures to review our national budgets and our national plans to enhance our capacity to maximize revenue generation in the sectors that are non-oil, and also to reduce expenditure that are related to revenue, so the revenue will be enhanced for the purpose of distribution at the state and the federal level. So, for example, we have some expenditures related to the oil and gas industry, to which we have cut down by about 50%. And this is to say these are major projects that we're pushing the implementation, stretching the implementation period so that more revenues will be available for the Federation to use. We have to make sure that we continue to pay staff salaries and pensions. The President has said we must protect that. And also we have to make sure that very critical developmental projects like roads and rails and major projects that catalyze growth and employ people are also preserved. So on the other hand, on the part of expenditure, of course we have to review the revenue downwards from the crude oil price in our budget to $30 per barrel. That is what we're working on. But remember that last week the crude oil price was as low as an average of $22 per barrel. But we're working with $30 per barrel, hoping that it stays that way. And that means our fiscal deficit has increased by as much as 2.3 trillion from the current 1.8 trillion that we have. So it means we have to cut down on some non-essential expenditure. For example, we have some category of capital expenditure that are administrative expenditure, such as buying of vehicles, building of headquarters, or renovation of non-essential buildings. Those we are going to defer because those can wait, and we can come back to them when things improve. The president has also asked for some administrative measures to be put in place, such as freezing employment, except for security services and the health sector. There will be no new employments that we can engage in. One positive thing that has happened out of this economic crisis for Nigeria is it means now we don't have to we are not incurring cost of under recovery for PMS, and therefore we're able to reduce the petroleum, the pump price. It has been reduced in the first turns to 125. We're expecting reductions as the price goes lower, so Nigerians will be able to conserve money that they would have otherwise spent on. So the budget is ongoing. We have to, of course, go back to the National Assembly to amend the MTEF and to amend the 2020 budget. We had an initial discussion with them yesterday to sensitize them on the measures we are taking regarding to the national budget and
we seem to be losing the minister there, but we'll return to her when the Skype improves. You know, we're not coming back to the studio. Mr. Uche Owaleke, in the studio some time back, you talked about, you gave an insight into the impact of COVID-19 on the stock market. What is the situation now?
Well, the situation hasn't changed. Globally, financial markets are in the red. If you look at the U.S. markets, you take the key major indicators there. You pick up the Standard & Poor's 500. You pick up Nasdaq, the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Year-to-date return, has been negative. You go over to Europe, where you have the London FTSE. You also have the France CAC 40. These are the indicators of market performance. And in Germany, you have the DAX. Again, they're down. Over to Asia, the Japanese Nike 225. You also have, even in China, where the pandemic began, the Shanghai index year-to-date return too has been negative. Of course, back home, year-to-date return as of yesterday was negative 19%. Except that, of course, yesterday we saw just a bit of positive performance yesterday, but that's on the back of the fact that you have a good number of companies announcing corporate actions, announcing dividends. So the majority of stocks that performed well yesterday, are banking stocks. You have GTB. You have the likes of, UBA, and so on. So the overall effect, has been negative. And for Nigeria in particular, it's been exacerbated by the fact that oil price is also going down. What studies have shown, even from, mere observation, is that there is a link, a strong correlation between our stock market performance and the price of oil. So anytime you find price of oil going up, our market is bullish. And when prices are dropping, the market is down. For obvious reasons, this is a market where you have, a sizable number, significant number of foreign participation, foreign investors. So each time there is a drop in price, it signals danger to them, and they flee and they leave. And each time they leave, the market goes down. So that's what's happening. But to comment on generally on what the government has done, listening to the minister, I think the government has risen to the challenge. The measures taken so far, especially the funds being released, and the fact that the government has also decided to thought it wise to reprioritize, because this is the time to reprioritize spending in favor of capital. And even in the capital, just as she said, taking out the administrative component of capital expenditure. So this is not the time to buy cars, for example, or to fix buildings. Anything that can wait should be made to wait. So that's reprioritization that is being done at the federal level. I want to also advise subnational governments, especially state governments, to also take a cue from that and also reprioritize the budget. If you are cutting down the benchmark for the budget from 57 to 30, that's also what state governments use. The assumptions state governments make when they prepare budget, are the same assumptions that the federal government virtually in all the states, and that's because most of the states, maybe except for Lagos, depend so much on oil revenue. And these days, of course, that is dropping. The last FAC revenue that was shared was 580, about a little shy of 590 billion. Okay, if you come, that is what was shared in March. In relation to February revenue. If you compare that to January, that's over 600 something billion. So you notice that it is yes, it is dropping. So state governments are going to face this challenge. So my advice to state governments is also to reprioritize, and in that prioritization, state government should ensure, just as the federal government has done, that salaries and wages the salaries of civil servants are prioritized. So particularly now that many state governments are shutting down. So if you are shutting down, putting your state on lockdown, partial lockdown, or even total lockdown as we've seen in some states, then there must be palliatives. And one of the palliatives should be to ensure that salaries are paid before you ask people to go home. Because as we speak, some state governments, today is 27th, some state governments are yet to pay, to the best of my, are yet to pay salaries. So salaries, they have to be paid before you ask people to start home. The Kaduna example is should also be emulated, in the sense that the governor is announcing a lockdown. At the same time, he's setting up a committee to ensure that from the contingent the contingency budget, grains are going to be purchased, foodstuffs are going to be purchased and distributed, going by the plan, in the various communities, using those committees. I think that's a good thing. Yeah. So these interventions are, in my view, I also want to seize the opportunity to salute the ones by even the corporate Nigeria, the private sector, being coordinated by the Central Bank of Nigeria. The Central Bank of Nigeria, in conjunction with the Bankers Committee, that's the chief executives of banks, and some high net worth individuals, the Dangote, have come together to put, to launch over 120 billion naira fund to be kept, at the central bank. And we understand some of them have already made contributions of 1 billion naira each. Right. So those that have contributed already, the likes of, we hear the former president, former vice president Atiku Abubakar has also given 50 million. So high net worth individuals, this is the time for them to make these contributions, that will be used for the purpose of ensuring that we increase hospital capacity and ensuring that we fight this pandemic. It is also the time, I have to add, for our those in government, our lawmakers, the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature to take pay cuts. In Kenya, the president, the vice president, and those in government are taking pay cuts, to ensure that this direct contribution. So this is the time, for that to happen.
Okay, thank you, Professor Waleke. We're going to return to you as we make progress in this conversation. Now, let's go to Benin, where we have Professor Michael Baden, Professor of Economics and member, Central Bank of Nigeria Monetary Policy Committee. Prof, once again, you're welcome to the program. You've listened to the Honorable Minister a short while ago outlining some palliative measures and also some stringent economic measures being put in place to guide the nation towards avoiding total collapse economically if the coronavirus continues to bite hard. Now, give us a sense, if you could, of what will become of the current monetary policy of the country, given the inevitability of adjustments in both the monetary policy and the fiscal policy of the nation with respect to the coronavirus pandemic and, of course, its economic consequences.
Well, thank you very much, Kirian. Well, let me say, first of all, that so far, the economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic has largely been macro in nature because of the sharp drop in crude oil prices. Government finances, have been adversely affected, and foreign exchange reserves have also been adversely affected, and in that light, most of the measures taken so far have related to addressing the macroeconomic impact, like the measures mentioned by the Honorable Minister of Finance relate to adjusting to the situation that the economy has found itself now, that because of the huge drop in oil prices and revenue and foreign exchange, consumption, seems to be much higher than revenue available. And so government has responded, adequately, appropriately, because when you have such a situation of imbalance, then adjustment is necessary. And that is the reason for reviewing the federal government budget downwards, reviewing the parameters like the crude oil price, and also giving some directives like embargo on appointments at this point in time. Then eliminating or removing expenditures, both recurrent and capital, that are not essential at this point in time. So invariably, the effects have been largely macro. Now we have a situation whereby the economy is gradually moving towards a lockdown. What that one means is that most economic activities will not be happening during the period of the lockdown because workers, producers, particularly those not in the essential areas identified by government, are not likely to be producing anything. So which means then that there will be a situation whereby we can, find scarcity of certain goods and services. Prices are likely to rise, and those issues will need to be addressed. Now, very importantly, you'll find that there is a large group of Nigerians, who are going to be affected at the micro level. In other words, the microeconomic impact is going to be much more prominent or visible at this point in time in terms of effects on individuals, effects on households, and you find that in that respect, there is a group of Nigerians who workers who are on daily paid. They earn their livelihood by working each day and they get paid. And we also have traders in that category who take their wares to the market on a daily basis. Based on what they sell, they are able to eke out a living. Such groups of people, that depend on, their daily efforts for living are very likely to be heavily impacted at this point in time because they will not have any income to sustain their living. But you see, most of the measures outlined so far, both the fiscal measures and the monetary policy measures, have not taken cognizance of this group of people. This will be in addition to those who are already unemployed, who do not have means of livelihood. But you see, if we look at the situation in the U.S., the government there took adequate cognizance of this group of people because with the virus and the shutdown of the U.S. economy, you found that so many people went into unemployment immediately. And how has the government responded? Government had now put up a stimulus bill which, takes care or wants to take care of a large segment of people. Those who are going to lose their jobs or those who have already lost jobs, small businesses that are going to close shop, and many others, families that will suffer during this process. So you find that in such countries, initiatives, measures are being put in place to address the concerns of those groups. But in Nigeria, as at the moment, that group is not being thought of at all. The federal government measures are largely macro in nature. Even the Central Bank of Nigeria's measures, which are very, very commendable and very proactive, and cover a large number of areas, this category of people is still excluded. And so there is a void there. And what then, government must then start thinking of what to do. I know that various stakeholders have already started making donations and contributions towards containing the coronavirus in terms of medical supplies, equipment, drugs, and all that. Even the Central Bank of Nigeria's and the Bankers Committee's initiative, as announced yesterday, also falls into that category. So what then can be done, in the sphere of fiscal measures will be a situation whereby the federal government should coordinate mobilization of funds from stakeholders. I would want a situation whereby something like a coronavirus economic relief fund is established and the federal government coordinates it. Stakeholders are enjoined or requested to contribute to that fund, and then the planners for government will sit down and say, how do we use such funds to meet the needs of that very vulnerable group that I have mentioned, which have not been mentioned, which have not been catered to so far. Now, on the issue of monetary policy measures, like I have mentioned, Central Bank has rolled out a number of measures. As far back as about 2-3 weeks ago, the Central Bank rolled out about 6 policy measures, aimed at repositioning the economy, once the coronavirus is contained. Because we are now in the phase of containing the coronavirus, and there is a lockdown. Once the economy begins to be unlocked down, begins to regain momentum, then definitely businesses will need to be jump-started, and economic activities will come up again, and businesses that have been weakened by the coronavirus will need to be strengthened. I think that's where the central bank measures, come in. particularly the 100 billion naira healthcare, support fund, and the 50 billion naira, targeted credit facility fund, which is aimed at, strengthening the capacity of households and small and medium enterprises to be able to make the economy working again once we are able to overcome this virus pandemic. But then, I must say that these funds the financial institutions administering these funds must now begin to operationalize them so that the businesses, households will begin to plan on the basis of what they are likely to receive. And once they have the opportunity to restart production and services, then there will be no, wasting of time, there will be no bureaucracy, they will have access to the funds, and then the economy can pick up again and will probably be on a trajectory of growth. So as at now, there are certain fiscal, measures, but they are not that comprehensive in terms of meeting the microeconomic impact, needs of the population. Then the monetary policy measures also have, a coverage which, omits the group of people which I talk about. So I think government, like I said, will need to have an economic relief fund to address those concerns. I'm saying that one because at this point in time, the federal government has very notable challenges in the area of revenue. And if you lock down the economy, then during that period, you cannot be talking about, generating more income. The capacity would have reduced, and so we then find a situation whereby we have to rely on stakeholders.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Mike Obadan. We'll be coming to you in the course of the program to give us more insight into our topic of discussion, repositioning the economy. We'll be going to Lagos now, where Tilewa Adebajo, development economist, is there. You've heard all our guests talk about repositioning the economy, prioritizing spending and all that. How are we bracing for tougher measures in this situation?
Good morning. Thank you very much. The question is, how are we bracing for tougher measures? First of all, I think let's go back firstly to what the finance minister said. I think she has spoken very well. She's articulated a lot of the issues. She's on top of the numbers, the issues of the deficit that they need to finance and what they need to cut back on. More importantly, I think the key projects that I believe that will provide stimulus, the infrastructure projects that they're working on, that will continue to generate employment. I think they're going to go ahead with that so that the economy does not stall. I think she's spoken very well, and I think there are many initiatives that we have heard that most of the other speakers have touched on, including the initiatives of the central bank, and I think Prof in Benin has also talked about a lot of the various intervention funds that are on queue. But having said that, I think what is important is that we have a pandemic, and I think that we have to understand that, first of all, the primary concern right now for Nigerians is the fact that we have a health concern. I'm sitting in this studio on my own. And I think all these issues of social distancing, and we have a health crisis on hand. And I think it is that health crisis that has actually precipitated this economic crisis. And I think it's important that we need to see how government will address this health crisis, because it's something that with a population of 200 million, the lockdown in Lagos and a lot of all the things we've been talking about, washing our hands, I think this is really where we need to understand that this is the priority at the moment. Of course, we also have to take a look at the economy, because this has also significantly impacted on the economy. Because the most important thing that has happened to us is that oil prices have crashed. And when oil prices crash, I think it comes to a deficit for us. And the minister is now talking about a deficit of close to 2.1 or close to between 2.1 and 2.5 trillion. Our debt service ratio is also something that is under pressure. So I think what is important is that the government needs to give us the confidence that they are ready to address this health concern. And I think a lot of the state governments have been putting all these measures in place, and this is confidence building. And I think now that we have the structures in place, we need to be able to implement so that the Nigerians and people can have the confidence. We're all under lockdown in Lagos, or limited movements, self-isolation and all those things. So we're now building confidence that the government has now the capacity to deal with this issue. And I think once we have that confidence, then I think the economy can begin to react accordingly. And I think the corporates are also reacting in terms of their corporate social responsibilities and contribution towards the helping out government to be able to resolve this problem. I think that is a step in the positive direction. If we're going to brace up, I think one of the most important things I think we've alluded to is the fact that a lot of people are going to be out of work. And I think, as Prof in Benin also said, a lot of Nigerians are dependent on daily pay, and they will be impacted more significantly. But I think what is more important is that let's take a look at the big picture and what the confidence is. The minister has spoken very well. The central bank has spoken very well. We need to also find, what I'm trying to look for now is some sort of coordination of activities. I wish the minister's documentation could be properly amplified because we're not seeing that documentation, what she's saying. We need to put that in the market space, because the sort of interview she's giving today will go a long way to calm down the financial markets, not only locally but also abroad. So that the finance minister needs to come out a bit more to be able to articulate this position she's eloquently done this morning, to be able to calm down the markets locally and also internationally, and to be able to provide business confidence. I think that is something that is also very important. The central bank alone cannot do this, because central bank, as we can see, has been limited by its monetary policy position, and it has been unable to cut rates. And quite clearly, monetary policy, I think, in the present situation in Nigeria has reached its limits. There's no way you're going to go with monetary policy anymore, because we haven't cut our rates when we're supposed to cut the rates. And what the central bank governor is trying to do now is to be able to keep rates a bit more, to be able to keep the naira competitive. So what I would like to see is more of a coordination between the economic management team that was just recently set up, which is led by Dr. Doyin Salami. I think it's important that they need to articulate their findings given the situation here. The Minister of Finance also needs to do that, the central bank governor with the monetary policy, and more importantly, we need to look at trade and investment in terms of our trade policy. We understand that our borders were closed because of the smuggling issue and trying to be able to align our trade policies. So what I would like to see more is the articulation and also coordination between the national, the economic management team, the Minister of Finance, the central bank governor, and the Minister of Trade and Investments with the presidency. I'd like to see some alignment in what they're all saying to be able to give us one direction that will be able to provide one solution and one confidence to the markets, both locally and abroad, to give us that direction. But as we said, everything is there in pockets. We just need now to aggregate everything and to be able to present something in a coordinated manner that can give business, both locally and internationally, confidence. Thank you.
All right, Tilawa Adebanjo, we've heard from you, and we hear from you yet again before the end of this program. Let's return to the Honorable Minister once more. I hope that the coast is clear for us to reach her via Skype as you did earlier on. Well, madam, if you can hear me clearly, in your opening remarks, you elucidated some of the programs and plans of government with respect to what should be the right reaction of government in the present situation that the world has found itself. And you listened to Professor Obadan, who actually raised a very important aspect of this conversation. He was talking about the micro the impact of the micro impact of this the microeconomic impact of this, which is on individuals and households who may have a direct hit on this issue of a lockdown, going by the fact that they are on daily pay. Some of them are traders, some are artisans, who depend on daily pay. And he talked about palliatives, to see how this group of people can be taken care of. In your package, is there any way this group of Nigerians, is captured, in whatever arrangement that the government has at the moment? This issue is very pertinent at this point because we're talking about millions of Nigerians who rely on daily pay. Is government capturing this? If not, is there any plans to do that as we go forward in this fight against the coronavirus in the country?
Well, thank you very much. Permit me, first of all, to speak to what we're doing for the health sector, because first of all, this is a health crisis, and then later, like one of the earlier speakers says, it's already showing that it's also an economic crisis. So for the health sector, we targeted pharmaceutical industries. We're giving them import duty waivers so that they can import essential inputs for production, because a lot of supply lines are broken and it's difficult to get medical supplies at this time. So we're encouraging them to go out there, find out whatever equipments they need, whatever inputs they need. A central bank will give them foreign exchange, and there's also financing that the banking system is giving them, and we're giving them waivers. We're willing to support them to even bring in these goods by air so that they are in the country very quickly, because we need to ramp up our capacity to respond medically. We also have been able to fund NCDC very adequately. We have funding, apart from the 6.5 billion released to NCDC, 10 billion to Lagos State. We have $9 million with the World Bank that we're drawing down on. We're expanding that by another 100 million. We also have a 3.4 billion from a multilateral institution that we're negotiating to us. We need to build up the health sector as well as key infrastructure to enable businesses stay on a path that is sustainable. On the pro-poor initiatives that are to provide as cushions to the poor and the vulnerable in our society, we already have the National Social Investment Program. We've been directed to review it to make sure that it reaches more people and also to add more on in that line. So in reviewing the National Social Investment Program, we're looking at the impact, the expanding the government enterprise program where monies are given to very small businesses, and also to conditional cash transfers where monies will be put into the hands of people. But the challenge we have there is that there's still a large number of our populace that are not financially inclusive. That is, they're not in the banking system. And in a time where we're locked down and movement is limited, it becomes difficult to reach people with resources that you need to provide for them. So we're looking at how best to do this. One of the options for us is to make an assessment of the lowest income earners within the banking system and be able to provide funds to them. But that also means we're not reaching the people in the rural areas that are not banked, except through the social register that has already been developed, and the number of households there is about maybe 12 million people altogether. So there's still a wide gap, and we're working with the humanitarian ministry and with development partners and with the state governments on how best to reach those people that require the intervention of government that cannot otherwise help themselves. So that's a lot of work that we have to do, and we're requiring support from different groups that will help us in identifying and reaching the people that need help the most.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. You know, it's a time for solidarity in the face of threat to humanity, and the United Nations has rolled out a launch of 2 billion global humanitarian funding appeal for COVID-19. And in Nigeria, we have a lot of vulnerable people, especially displaced people in the Northeast in the face of insurgency. What is being done? What is on ground to ensure that these people have a cushioning effect on the impact of COVID-19? I would like to take the question again. This is a time for humanity to come together, and the United Nations has launched a $2 billion global humanitarian funding appeal for COVID-19 for vulnerable people. In Nigeria, we have a lot of them, especially displaced people in the Northeast in the face of insurgency. What is there to cushion the effect and the impact of COVID-19 on people like that?
So this UN fund is already up and running. Nigeria already has the first component of $2 million for the humanitarian response, and largely that will be addressing the Northeast. One benefit we have in the Northeast is that because there has been a lot of work going on there, it's actually easier to reach people, because there has been a lot of different efforts by government, multilateral institutions, private individuals, private enterprises to reach people that are hit by the impact of the insurgency. So distributing support in the Northeast has been something that has been ongoing. So it's actually easier to reach people in the Northeast than in other parts of the country where there has been that where that type of crisis did not exist.
All right, let's go back to Benin, where we have Professor Michael Butter. Prof, you listened to the minister and how she was able to explain out, the programs and plans of government in respect to the current situation in the country. Now, how can there be a better coordination between the economic team, the government, and of course, government at the sub-national level? Because whatever is being done at the national level, if it does not, is not cascaded down to the sub-national level, then it may mean nothing after all. So what should be the right reaction now with respect to better coordination of key players to see how we can come up with a format that will respond, not just quickly, but respond to certain questions that are unanswered, because now Nigeria is still at we have about 65 cases now, so it has not gotten to a point where there's going to be a total lockdown. But if it comes, how prepared do you think that we are, to face the pandemic economically?
Thank you very much, Kieran. The issue of coordination is very important. I think that was what was in my mind when I suggested earlier on that the federal government should coordinate the various initiatives at mobilizing funds and resources to address the coronavirus issue, because I'm aware that different government agencies and even the private sector, they are doing a number of things, on their own without much coordination at the center. And it is because of such lack of coordination that we have the void, which I, referred to earlier on, of a significant group that is, inadvertently, being left out in the scheme of things. Although the Honorable Minister said, vulnerable groups of people, are likely to be catered for within the social investment, program. That may not be adequate. What the central bank is doing it within the context of the monetary policy framework, and is doing it in the context of his objectives of maintaining monetary and price stability and promoting economic growth in Nigeria. And so that's why it is through the programs, it is facilitating more access to finance at cheap interest rates to various businesses, and households in the economy. That its central bank will continue to, monitor and implement. The fiscal measures, the federal government definitely will continue to implement and monitor also. But it is this area of coordinating the resources to contain the coronavirus that coordination will be required, at the federal level, and also the area of mobilizing resources to address the vulnerable groups that are going to be without income during the containment period, which we don't know how long it will last. If it lasts maybe 2 weeks, very good. The need will be very limited. But if it goes to 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, that's likely to be catastrophic, because there could be a revolt even among that group of people during that period when they don't have anything to fall back to. So that's why I said, let the federal government coordinate, coronavirus economic relief fund, to which various stakeholders, would donate, contribute, notwithstanding whatever contributions they had already made. And then at that level, you will then have representatives, various agencies, central bank, the ministries, and all that, to be part of the management of such a fund, and then the planning of how to use it. So that does not preclude individuals who may still want to donate materials and equipment. So definitely there is need for coordination. But if we think that more formal coordination will be required, that will be within the purview of the National Economic Council, which will then bring in, all the state governments, federal agencies and all that. That's actually the coordinating mechanism in the country, particularly because the implementation of most of these initiatives will take place at the state and local government level. So coordination, Kieran, like you mentioned, is very important, such that various agencies, individuals and groups will not be doing things at cross purposes. And the federal government should take the initiative, at that level.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Mike Obado. I see the Minister of Finance trying to respond to what you're saying now. Let's see if she has anything to say on that.
Well, just to say, thank you very much for this opportunity. Just to say that we already have a presidential coordination group that is chaired by the Secretary of the Government of the Federation, that has key ministries as members, as well as key agencies, as well as the states. The last meeting we had of the National Economic Council, the states also formed a committee of the state governors and some of the federal agencies, including my ministry as well as the budget office. So we're working together with the states, we're working together within government, we're not working in isolation. The first committee that the president said was a small committee of myself, the central bank governor, the Honorable Minister of State Petroleum Resources, and the GMD NMPC to make an assessment of the impact on the economy. Then there's this broader group that is chaired by the Secretary of the Government of the Federation that is coordinating all the efforts. As at yesterday, they had made a full assessment, made full costing, and provided to us the requirement for each sector, ministry, department, or an agency. They are also reaching out to the private sector for funding support. As I said earlier on, we have identified pockets of funding that can be made available to that group immediately. And there are some that we have put requests in process. So we'll be funding the needs of that coordination committee. So the coordination committee has made an assessment of what is required in the 36 states and the FCT. So it's not a national level effort alone. It is also involving the states. So there is a strong coordination mechanism. What I like is the suggestion to have a crisis response fund, and we'll take that up so that individuals that also want to donate can donate into one single pool so that the efforts are not fragmented.
All right, Honorable Minister, thank you indeed. Let's go back to Lagos, where we have Tilawa Adebanjo. Tilawa, talk to us in this direction. Most of the states are gradually shutting down. Well, we'll hear they are partially down at the moment, and many state governments are also complaining of funds. We have talked on this program today that it is important for governments to ensure that the salaries are paid, for instance. And of course, Professor Bada keep highlighting the issue of the vulnerable group, which is very, very key to this issue. Now, let's get your opinion on the best way to address the funding aspect of this as it affects both macro and microeconomic impact of this coronavirus.
Thank you very much. I think we must also, one of the things we mustn't get carried away when we start talking about this vulnerable group is that this virus does not respect any group, and we have a healthcare crisis on our hands. And it is important that the efforts must be done across board, across the country, and the governors are at the forefront of this response, because at the end of the day, it is the governors that actually control the states, and the federal government is only providing support, logistics, and coordination in terms of policy. So we're all vulnerable. So if we do not take care of this pandemic, whether you are economically able or you are economically unable, it's going to be a problem. So I think it's important, first of all, that we address this crisis. And I think, as the minister has said, this committee, which has been set up, headed by the Secretary of the Federation, the governors are the ones that need to be empowered to be able to take a look at their state systems and to be able to understand, they have a better understanding of what's going on. We have a very active governor in Lagos. A lot of things have been going on here. And I think we're happy that the federal government has recognized this and given 10 billion to Lagos State. These are the sort of support that we're looking to see. Because when you have a situation like this, it is the governors that have to stand up and lead the way. And I think from what the minister has been saying, they are being provided with the necessary support that they need. And if there's any additional funding that is coming through from the private sector or from international agencies, then it's up to the federal government to channel it to where they think there's a position of need. And I think it's important that we concentrate on the efforts that are being made to be able to resolve this healthcare crisis. If we concentrate on that effort, that will provide the confidence we need for the business community. Yes, we also need to address the issue of what happens when we do the lockdown. And I think that in each state, in each government, I think they can look at it and make suggestions to the federal government to see what they can do. What I would like to suggest is, I think, as the minister has said, is that I think it's important that we have a press conference for the financial community to be able to give both the financial community, the business community, both here and abroad, the confidence as to what this is all about. So I think it's very important for the Minister of Finance to do a press conference. As you can see, people are beginning to donate all kinds of things. If we can get that effort on, mobilize some of these NGOs, they can also mobilize food banks, churches, the mosques, and the religious community. This is the time they need to step up to be able to support the vulnerable. And I think that if we have coordinated efforts within these areas, people that are vulnerable, with food banks being set up by the churches, the mosques, and of course a lot of private sector support with the NGOs, they can also contribute significantly to addressing the issue of the vulnerable people. On the monetary policy side, interestingly enough, I think it's important to understand that the only money that has been reduced the interest rates are intervention funds. So I think what is important is that the MPC should also meet, and they should cut their rates. 14% is significantly high. You need to get to at least 10% or single digit to be able to provide a general interest rate cut across the economy. Those are the sort of things that you need to do in terms of policy that will make an impact. If you signal that to the markets, prices of things will come down and the business community will react accordingly. And of course, people will have access not only to credit, but I think businesses will respond to that cut in interest rates. These are the sort of things that we need to look at in terms of practical things in terms of the economy that we need to do. So I think Prof should look at that. He's a member of the Monetary Policy Committee. I think we need significant rate cuts, not just on intervention funds. The interest rate cuts we are talking about are only on intervention funds. You need to take the whole market down to single-digit interest rates for us to be able to survive through this process from the economic policy is to ease credit. And I think not only will that help, but also will reduce the cost of borrowing for government, because government also has to fund the deficit. If we're funding the deficit at higher rates, it's going to be a lot more problem for us, because we're spending close to 60 to 65% of our revenues to service debt. And that revenue has gone down significantly now, so that number can be going up to as high as 70. So I think these are the sort of things that we need to address for us to do that. But on a day like today, I wouldn't really like to talk too much about the economic perspectives, but what I want us to do is to focus on the effort that the government is doing to ensure this pandemic is controlled. The governors are doing their lockdown, and I think we all have to follow the lead of the governors in each of our states, because let's see what each governor is saying and let's follow that lead. And I think that we're encouraged by the sort of funding support that the government is giving to each, the federal government is giving to each state to see what we're doing. News conference from the ministers, I think, will calm the markets down. And I think that we should try to put the economic discussion at the back and let us put the health resolution matters in the forerunner. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tilewa Adebajo. We'll take a break right now. When we return, the conversation continues.
Oh boy, climb this thing now. Not be only to connect lights. Come you and yourself now. Now wow. Oh boy, come down now. Oga Kasali electrician who will look for this. Oh, Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer, because change begins with me.
Oh boy, letting him talk makes sense. Oh boy, we could carry this ladder from off.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You are still watching Good Morning Nigeria and the network service of the NTA. A short while ago, our guest in Lagos, Tilewa Adebajo, was talking about keeping the economic aspect behind and go on to pursue the aspect of fighting the coronavirus. Both of them, they're intertwined. They go pari passu, you know, because when the economy is touched, then you know that the future is not guaranteed. Yes, the fight is on against the coronavirus, and that is why we have decided to do a program today on repositioning the economy to ensure that as we fight coronavirus, we'll also ensure that our economy does not collapse. I want to bring in Professor Uwaleke here now. He also talked about general interest rate cut as not good enough, you know, to ensure kind of economic support that we are talking about. I want to speak to that and other issues that the Honorable Minister of Finance raised in the course of answering one of our questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. I agree that the interest rate cut, particularly for the interventions, is not deep enough from 9% to 5%. I would expect to see an interest-free business interruption loan, as we have in other climes, just for this period. But the aspect of going back to monetary policy and cutting rates is what I don't really subscribe to, because just as I think he also rightly noted, monetary policy has reached its limit with respect to tackling this issue. Number one, you are looking at where the inflation rate is. Inflation rate as of February was 12.2%, and the central bank has an inflation threshold of 12%. So you can't do rates below inflation rates. Even theoretically, it's against the Taylor rule in monetary policy. So you are looking at inflation, and you're also looking at the exchange rate, the pressure on exchange rate. If you reduce interest rates, I mean the benchmark interest rate from the current 13.5%, okay, there is a likelihood that that will exert pressure because of the liquidity surfeit you're going to have. It will exert pressure on the exchange rate. So I think it is for that reason that the central bank, the MPC, thought it wise not to reduce the rate. And besides that, what experience has shown in this country is that interest rates are sticky downwards. So even when you decide to reduce benchmark interest rate, it doesn't automatically translate to lower lending rates, by commercial banks. And that's because the commercial banks are also struggling with some other structural deficits. Okay, commercial banks are struggling with a lot of cuts, including the cost of power. So even when you reduce rates, it's difficult for them to automatically follow. But the moment you increase rates, okay, they are quick to reprice. So I am not subscribing to the idea of using that tool, to support growth at this moment. And that's why the unconventional means, okay, is what appears to be working. The issue of throwing in 50 billion naira, even 1.1 trillion again for the SMEs that are badly hit, whether airlines, manufacturing, and so on. And with the Bankers Committee too, we understand they're packaging a total of 3.5 trillion. So the unconventional means of tackling by the central bank, and of course in pursuit of their developmental function, in my view, is better than saying you want to go back to the monetary policy rate. Now, having said that, I talked about the pressure on exchange rate. One of the moves that I think was a little hasty by the central bank in relation to the exchange rate was to use the words of the central bank governor, was the upward adjustment in the exchange rate coming at this time. Okay, so because what that has done is to signal, because it has, my worry about it is the signaling property. Okay, you are signaling that that there is a panic, and this is a time for this is the time that what is being preached now is avoid panic behavior, because panic behavior is not helping the economy. So coming a few days after there was an assurance that the exchange was the naira was not going to be devalued. So in my view, the upward adjustment of the exchange rate came at the wrong time. We could have allowed this wind to blow over before doing that. One implication that is going to have, you had the Honorable Minister talking about giving incentives to for companies to import whatever they need. So that import will be at a high cost. A lot of state governments and even the federal government, even when they reprioritize in favor of health, that's the capital component will substantially be dollar denominated, and that will also, increase, the prices. So, for me, in all of this, there are two major lessons that we have to learn. One is the fact that this is the time to begin to build a database, the database of the unemployed, the database of households in an economy, because if we had that, the implementation of some of these measures would have been easier for us. Just the other day, I think it was the former vice president that suggested giving out 10,000 naira to 30 million households, in his estimate in Nigeria. Okay, you can't do that now because you don't have the database. In the US, for example, they can afford to send checks, directly to people because they have that data, but that data is not available here. So this is the time for us to begin to build, that data, against for the future. The second lesson has to do with the health. It has become manifest that the health, the funding in this country is, grossly inadequate. I'm aware of the National Health Insurance Scheme, but of course, the coverage is very little, just about 5%, and it's only it doesn't involve the critical mass, of the population. It's only mainly concerned with the formal sector. I'm also aware of the basic, the National Basic Health Fund. Okay, where the government is supposed to contribute 1% of consolidated receipts. But in all of this, you will notice that what we are spending on health is inadequate, and that makes it compulsory for us to look for innovative ways of funding health. What we are doing in the education sector, maybe we can take a cue by inviting the private sector to also help fund health. In education, we have the third fund. If not for the third fund, some of the infrastructural projects you have in the Nigerian universities today, you will not have them. So if you also have something like that, a special tax for health that will go strictly to infrastructure in the health sector, we wouldn't be talking about lack of hospital beds, lack of isolation centers and ventilators and so on. We would have had something to fall back on to provide them.
Well, even bigger economies actually are having the same problem. America is overwhelmed by what is going on right now.
Yes, I know, but just as you think you mentioned, apart from even the COVID, we have other health challenges. So we need to increase hospital capacity.
That what I've said is correct. We need to increase in our effort in that direction. Because now, even in England now, the London Conference Hall has been converted to a hospital, as at yesterday. So, but it's important that we have something that is good enough before we now begin to get overwhelmed. But I want the Honourable Minister to respond to some of the things that you raised, and I'd like you, Madam, to take this along. This government's policy has been predicated on the issue of diversification of national economy, which the government is working on for a long time now. And this time around, that we have a kind of economic shock, and the budget, which is predicated on the price of oil, is affected. And looking at the non-oil sector, is there any hope in the non-oil sector with respect to funding the budget? Because of course I know that you said that the National Assembly is going to be reviewing the 2020 budget downwards, which means that fund is lacking. Can we have any respite, from non-oil sector in this direction?
What we're doing for the non-oil sector is to strengthen the number of incentives that have been provided and new ones added. For example, for the agricultural sector, in the Finance Act, there is an 8-year tax holiday that is provided for the agricultural sector for the whole value chain. There's an amendment process that is going on now to restrict it to just the production aspect. And there is also tax holidays that we are going to give to pharmaceutical industries. I mentioned this earlier on. It's important for us that the healthcare industry grows and is strong. There are tax incentives that we're looking to provide in terms of deferment of taxes to some specific sectors to enable them plow back money into their businesses, grow the businesses, and employ more people. So we're using fiscal policy, and these are still at design stage because we have to do engagements at different levels and also look at the broader impact, especially because we already have a very tight fiscal space. The decline in the crude oil price has made things worse. So we're not in the same spot with America and with the UK that we just bring out funds and distribute to the citizens. So we're doing this by way of providing incentives to encourage businesses to retain money within their own businesses, to be able to invest more and to employ people. And in terms of meeting the needs of the poor and vulnerable, we're working with development partners, with very well-meaning people and companies within the society to help the states and the federal government to reach out to the people that need needs. We know that the monetary authorities have provided some funding available for MSMEs, but I want to also remind the public that the Development Bank is also there providing funding to SMEs. The Bank of Agriculture is there. The Bank of Industry is there. Oftentimes, our businesses, our small businesses, don't even take advantage of these opportunities that are provided. So we need to, somebody said we should do a press conference. We need to sensitize people more of the opportunities that are there so that they can take advantage of them and use them to retain their businesses, to grow the businesses, and to employ people. We believe employing people is the best way to provide social support to people rather than giving people cash or some stipends. When you put somebody in employment, that's the best way to make sure that they have a stable life.
Okay, thank you so much, Honorable Minister. As talking about the people want to contribute to this conversation in our tweets. Mike Anyako tweets, it is no longer news that COVID-19 will or already affecting the economy negatively. But what matters now is how we are repositioning the economy to face the obvious challenges. The federal government so far has taken the bull by the horn to stem the tide.
From Festus Akimbo, COVID-19 is unprecedented and its economic cost will be huge. I don't think any Nigerian knows what kind of Nigeria we will awake to after COVID-19 emergency is over, but we are now presented with another opportunity to restructure our economy. Hope we will catch the opportunity.
Comrade Alhaji Ngala tweets, COVID-19 has seriously affected the economy of Nigeria and the world at large. The price of commodities are highly increased. Federal and state governments should suspend all ongoing projects and focus on the economy. Otherwise, even payments of workers' salaries will become difficult.
Akeju Alabaju says budget review should include renegotiation of our debt and possibly press for debt forgiveness in view of the present situation. It is a way to turn the disaster to opportunity. The expenditure framework should focus on necessity to get good value for every naira spent.
And Omobola Hombab's tweets, nations over are equally making necessary adjustments to reflect the current realities. Only hours ago, the U.S. and its Legislative Assembly hurriedly passed a legislation on the pandemic. Nigeria should brace up and prepare for post-COVID-19 realities. That's one way to prevent the shock.
Chris Simeon says the dreaded COVID-19 pandemic has affected our economy negatively, but our economy can be repositioned if the new policy measures introduced by the CBN to mitigate the spread of the pandemic across the country are strictly adhered to.
Titus Monday Knock tweets, repositioning the economy is very urgent at this critical moment. We need to emphasize more on our agricultural prowess of the past than the present high dependency on oil, which is not dependable in critical times like this. I believe that if our food reserve is so rich, people would absorb the shocks.
Delejak Solomon, the federal government's decision to cut the 2020 budget by 1.5 trillion, reduce the oil benchmark to $13 per barrel, and cut capital budget by 20% as announced on Wednesday is a welcome development because you can't give what you don't have. We must cut our coats according to our clothes. It's a reality.
It's indeed a reality. Steve Bond 007 says it's time to diversify completely. Mining should be out of the exclusive list. All regions should manage their resources. Oil is fast becoming irrelevant.
All right, and Bashiru, the review of the budget is a step in the right direction. However, there's much more to worry about. For instance, should the problem escalate to total shutdown, how is the government going to provide economic palliatives given lack of data?
And coming from Ahmed Mohammed, while I sincerely pray that this pandemic COVID-19 comes to an end, I hope the budget review won't dash our hopes on the recruitment process. I think it's in the labor market there.
Yes, exactly, and it's very important.
Yeah,
For instance, America has lost about 3-point-something million persons who have been working, who have been laid off, because of the coronavirus. Citizen 001, budgetary allocation should be readjusted. Health, education should be given much more priority.
Ademo Oko tweets, I think this is the time to work on our economy.
Well, we are actually concluding this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, but before we do that, let's return to the minister. I want us to do closing remarks, all the guests to do closing remarks. I want to begin with the minister because I'd like her to address one issue raised by someone here who sent a tweet. He's talking about lack of data in the country if we get to a point where we have a total lockdown. And Honorable Minister, you have said that it is not possible, to begin to distribute money or stipends to people, which is, of course, clear and understandable. But in a situation like this, we don't pray to get to a level where there will be total lockdown. Because if that happens, perhaps the country might develop another concept this time around to see how Nigerians will be reached financially or otherwise. I want you to do your closing remarks. And of course, you can also touch on certain issues raised by the prof here with us in the studio.
And the tweets too.
Yes.
Okay. Well, before I address that, one of the issues that were raised by the messages is the issue of the need to renegotiate our debts or to get debt break. We're already doing that. So just to put it out there. And also that we're working very closely with the states to find out ways how we can reach the people that are most in need, that cannot take care of themselves. Because the people are in the states, they're largely in the rural areas. We have a register that has just a few millions registered. And then we have a large number of our population that are not in the banking system. Assuming every Nigerian had a bank account, then it would be easy to reach out and provide monies. But now we have to find other ways, working with the states and the local governments, to be able to reach the people that need help the most. On the other hand, we are concentrating right now on reinvigorating the health sector, re-equipping our health sector to be able to cope with responding if this thing gets out of hand. We pray it doesn't get out of hand, but we have to build our capacity to do that. So in a way, it's also an opportunity that we have now to reinvest and upgrade our healthcare centers.
Honorable Minister, we'll now go to Benin, where Professor Mike Obadun is working. We'd like to have your closing comments. You've listened to the tweets, you've listened to the minister and other guests. Now let's have your closing comments on how to cushion the effect of this pandemic actually on Nigerians economically.
Thank you very much, Jumai. But before then, let me quickly reassure our respected guest in Lagos, Tilewa, that something is being done already about making funds available to borrowers and stakeholders at cheap interest rates. And reasonable achievement has been accomplished in that regard. I believe very strongly that businesses, firms, households should be able to access credit at low interest rates, and the central bank also believes in that, and it has been working towards that one. Whether we cut monetary policy rates, whether it will lead to the desired result, it will not. And I'm happy Professor Waleke has already explained the reason there. At the moment, the inflation rate is above 12%, and that means it's above, the target that is growth enhancing. So, and if it continues to increase more than the 12%, then it will be growth retarding. So we should be concerned about the liquidity sulfate in the country. And very importantly, the deposit money banks, by their behavior, are not known to respond, positively to cuts in monetary policy rate. They relate to the monetary policy rate in an asymmetric way, in the sense that when the monetary policy rate is increased, they quickly increase lending rates. But when the monetary policy rate is reduced with a view to signaling them to reduce lending rates, they do not respond.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Mike Obadan. Tilewa Adebanjo, your closing comments.
Thank you very much. I think we are in very difficult situations. We're in a pandemic. We all need to listen to our governors to be able to take the lead from what they're doing. And I believe that it is the confidence that the government gives us that will help businesses. As I said, this is not the time for us to debate economic issues. Let us focus on what the government is doing to be able to get us through this pandemic. And in the background, we can have our discussions on how we're going to move the economy forward. But I believe that the Minister of Finance has heard what we've all said here today, and I believe they can collate that information and use it to be able to drive their policies. But please, Honorable Minister, we need a press conference for the local markets and international markets. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we'll appreciate your input on this program today on repositioning the economy. And we also thank Professor Mike Obadan, Professor of Economics and member Central Bank of Nigeria Monetary Policy. Thank you so much for your input. We come back now to our studio where Uche Owaleke is seated. Your closing comments, please.
Yeah, I would like to commend the federal government on the effort so far, the palliative measures, especially as being disclosed now by the Honorable Minister. I understand the principal officers of the House of Representatives, are sponsoring a bill, a national economic emergency bill that provides for, some tax rebates, for companies to ensure, job protection. They don't lay off staff. To reduce import duties for pharmaceuticals that have been imported, and again moratorium on mortgages that are in respect of the National Housing Fund. So that's in order. What I want to say is that the palliatives the minister just mentioned now should be incorporated in the bill that the House of Reps officers are sponsoring, so that it can be all encompassing.
Yeah. Okay, Prof, we have to stop you there because we have been asked to round off this edition of the program. Well, we have touched on a good number of issues in this conversation, and these issues are very pertinent with respect to what should be government's action towards ensuring that Nigerians are safe. Well, from the coronavirus, one, and of course economically, because of course it's biting in Lagos. Some traders are not going to the market and are no longer trading, as well as in so many other states. And in the next couple of weeks, if it continues this way, then it's going to be a major issue, which we are praying that it should not get to. So at this point, we'd like to say thank you to you, Professor Uche Owaleke, a professor of finance and capital market, Nasarawa State University, and former commissioner of finance, Imo State. It's been a pleasure talking to you on the program this morning. And of course, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, who joined us via Skype. Honorable Minister, thank you indeed for waking up with us this morning, and you made your points known to Nigerians. Thank you indeed for being part of our show this morning.
Yeah, and a very good morning to you. Enjoy the rest of the day. I am Juma Yusuf.
And I am Kiri and Umayo. We thank you for watching. We'll see you again on Monday.